Let me get this straight, the boy watched him, green eyes guarded. There was someone in your house tonight. The boy's mask slipped for a moment, clearly not expecting that. Yes? They were probably dangerous. I mean, they had a weapon, Shouta said sternly. Yeah. The boy gave Shouta a confused look. And you, no offense, are an unarmed, uncoordinated child, Shouta pointed out. The boy's nose crinkled, slightly offended. Yeah, I guess, he admitted bitterly. So what possessed you to shout, "Come at me, little bitch"? Shouta asked, exasperated. Aizawa Shouta chased the shoplifter through the quiet night. Normally, he'd have caught his target by now, but this guy had a speed quirk. It was difficult to erase his quirk when he couldn't even see the asshole. He was relying on his hearing over his eyesight at this point to even keep track of where he was. He turned the corner onto a run-down residential street just in time to see the thief's foot disappearing into a house. Approaching the building, he could see that it was probably condemned. The door was off its hinges, not broken, simply unable to be supported by the rotting wood frame. Creeping forward cautiously, he entered the house. The closed quarters could negate the thief's quirk enough to capture him, but the guy still had a gun. Shouta had to be careful. "Come at me, little bitch," a voice rang out, sounding like it belonged to a child. Shouta's blood ran cold. Was there a civilian in here after all? He sprinted in the direction he heard the voice coming from. Turning into what used to be a living room, he saw the thief pointing his gun at a kid. Luckily, that meant he was distracted. Shouta attacked, wrapping the thief up in his scarf and turning off his quirk in one quick movement. The gun fell to the floor, unfired. Shouta counted his blessings that it didn't go off from the impact. "You okay, kid?" he asked the boy. The kid shrugged, watching Shouta with suspicion. Shouta ignored the kid for a moment to call the police. After they had arrived to collect the thief, slapping quirk-canceling handcuffs on him and bagging his weapon for evidence, Shouta went back inside to talk to the kid. He was a little surprised to see that the kid hadn't run off. Instead, he was leaning against the wall, sitting on a pile of blankets and clothes. A makeshift bed, Shouta realized. "Do you live here?" Shouta asked, alerting the boy to his presence. "What's it to you?" The boy asked with a level of animosity that sounded wrong in a child's voice. Shouta shook his head. The kid could be a runaway with good reason. He could do more harm than good turning the kid in. But at the same time. "Let me get this straight," the boy watched him, green eyes guarded. "There was someone in your house tonight." The boy's mask slipped for a moment, clearly not expecting that. Yes? They were probably dangerous. I mean, they had a weapon, Shouta said sternly. Yeah. The boy gave Shouta a confused look. And you, no offense, are an unarmed, uncoordinated child, Shouta pointed out. The boy's nose crinkled, slightly offended. Yeah, I guess, he admitted bitterly. So what possessed you to shout, "Come at me, little bitch"? Shouta asked, exasperated. The boy mumbled, looking at his hands in his lap. Do you have some kind of flashy quirk or something? Shouta tried, hoping to figure out the source of this kid's stupid bravery. Not really, no, the kid said softly, his voice cracking slightly. Shouta faltered at that. Then why antagonize him? Shouta asked gently. Something was off here. Why not? The kid shrugged. He could have killed you, Shouta said slowly, driving in his point. It's not like it matters. And there it was. This kid had a death wish. Shouta sighed. What are you doing out here, kid? Are you running from something? The kid stayed silent, but Shouta pressed. If someone at home hurt you, I can. This is my home, the kid snapped, cutting off the older man. Really? Shouta said skeptically, looking around the room. I've been here 2 years now, the kid said, green eyes blazing defiantly. Before that? Shouta prompted. The kid rolled his eyes. Before that, I slept on the street. This place was condemned when I found it. It's fair game. He glared at Shouta, daring him to argue with that. Shouta ran a hand through his long hair, frustrated with the conversation. Where are your parents? He asked, barely keeping his voice level. Hell if I know, the kid muttered, defiant attitude vanishing to make way for something sadder. How long have you been on your own? Shouta asked, softening instantly. He watched the kid hold his hands out in front of himself to count, and God if that isn't a bad sign. 8 years, the kid supplied hesitantly after a few minutes. And you're how old? The kid in front of him was young. To be alone 8 years already, he would have had to end up like this at an insanely young age. How did he not die? 14. Shouta's mind reeled at that, doing the math in his head. 6. He would have been 6. How did he not die? Are your parents? Shouta trailed off, unsure how to ask if he understood death when he was 6. Alive? Sure. I lost track of them about 3 years ago when they moved, the kid answered easily. Hold on. You've been living on the street for 8 years and knew where your parents were for most of that time? The more he heard, the more confused he got. The kid gave him an intense look, evaluating him. Shouta accepted the scrutiny, waiting to see what he would say next. The kid must have found what he was looking for because he sighed and opened his mouth to speak. What he said next shocked the hero. I'm quirkless. I was diagnosed quirkless when I was 4. My father held out hope that the doctor was wrong and tried to encourage a quirk to develop. When I was 6 and still showed no signs of a quirk, he gave up. One day he told me and my mom to get in the car. He drove us for hours, through many prefectures. Then he stopped and told me to get out. Shouta couldn't mask the horror that showed on his face. The kid gave him a tense smile. It took me a few days, but I got back home. When my mom opened the door, she cried. My father came to the door when he heard her and he slapped me. Told me never to come back. The kid chuckled suddenly. Can you believe I stayed in the area anyway so that I wouldn't miss school? If he attended school regularly, that explains how he wasn't found out by way of truancy. In 8 years, no one noticed that you were homeless? Shouta questioned him. Well, a few times they did. Police picked me up, sent me to an orphanage. I wanted to stay, especially the one winter I was brought there, but they kicked me out, the kid replied. They as in, the people who ran the orphanage? Shouta asked hesitantly. Yeah. Quirkless kids are bad for business. They didn't want me to ruin the other kids' chances. The police didn't care much either. They never said anything about the orphanage kicking me out. They just brought me back because protocol said they had to, the kid said mirthlessly. Shit, kid, Shouta's mind raced as he tried to think of what to do. Do you want to come with me? With you? The guarded look reappeared on the kid's face. Live with me, Shouta clarified, taking a few steps forward. Not that kind of kid. Green eyes tracked Shouta and he stopped, trying to figure out what the kid meant. When the kid drew his knees up to his chest protectively, Shouta realized. Oh, God no. I don't mean like. Shouta paused for a second. Have people propositioned you? That's not what I'd call it, but yeah, the kid glared at him. Shouta would unpack that statement another time. I wouldn't do anything to you. It's just not safe for you to be out here and you're reckless, apparently. The kid had the decency to look a little guilty for his earlier, come at me statement. Going with you wouldn't necessarily protect me. You could hurt me, regardless of what you say. Plus if police pick me up for any reason, would just be sent back to the orphanage and then inevitably kicked out again, the kid argued. I'm not going to hurt you, but I understand I'll need to earn your trust. As for the rest of that, what if I could make it so you'd be returned to me, Shouta asked. And how would you do that? The kid scoffed. I'd adopt you, Shouta answered plainly. The kid looked at him with wide eyes. You'd adopt a quirkless kid? The kid asked, disbelieving. You're a kid that needs a home. I don't care about quirks, Shouta countered. So come with me? He held a hand out to the kid. The kid glanced at his outstretched hand. No. Shouta let his hand fall back to his side. Prove it first. Words don't mean anything. I could just take you. That's an action, Shouta teased. The kid smirked. No, you couldn't. Shouta raised an eyebrow. Your quirk won't work on me since I'm quirkless. And since I know the layout of this house and the surrounding neighborhood better than you, I could get out of here faster than you could catch me in those ribbons. Eraserhead. First, it's a scarf, not ribbons. Second, how do you know what my quirk is? It hasn't been published, Shouta demanded. If it had been published somewhere, he needed to get it taken down. He was an underground hero for a reason. That guy was fast when he ran in here. After your eyes glowed, he wasn't. Your hero name is Eraserhead. I guessed, the kid said flatly. That's a pretty good guess. The kid shrugged. How about this? I'll go get you a burner phone from the nearest convenience store and program my number in it. I won't be as worried about leaving you here if I know you can contact me in an emergency. Tomorrow I'll talk to someone who can help figure out the adoption process. Sounds fair, the kid said, nodding. Shouta was quick getting the phone on the off chance that the kid would bolt. Aizawa Shouta, the kid asked, reading the only contact name in the phone. That's my actual name. If I'm going to adopt you, you should know it. What about you? Midoriya Izuku, the kid said, texting Shouta so his number could be saved. Shouta crept into his apartment quietly. He hung up his scarf and kicked off his shoes. He stopped in the kitchen long enough to warm up and eat the meal left in the fridge for him. As much as he wanted to crawl into bed, he had to shower thanks to that thief taking him on a cross-city run. After a quick shower, he was standing in his room in sweats, toweling off his hair. Shouta looked down at the sleeping form in his bed and smiled fondly. With his hair sufficiently dry, he crawled into the bed wrapping his arm around his husband. Sho, he mumbled sleepily, stirring at the movement. Emichim, Shouta mumbled, holding him tighter. How was your patrol? He asked, placing his hand over Shuta's arm. Something happened that we'll need to talk about tomorrow, Shouta replied. Are you okay? He asked, tensing in Shuta's grasp. I'm fine. I promise, Shouta soothed, bringing a hand up to pet over his blonde hair. We can talk in the morning. Sleep for now, Zashi. The blonde relaxed again. All right, Sho. How old? His husband asked the next morning, looking at the picture Shouta had taken of the boy before heading home. With his consent, of course. 14, he said, Shouta answered. He looks a lot younger than that, the blonde replied skeptically. He's been homeless for 8 years, Hizashi. It's safe to assume he's malnourished, Shouta pointed out. Hizashi swiped to the next photo, the one of the house. And he's been living here? For 2 of those years. He spent the rest on the street, Shouta clarified. And you left him there? Hizashi said, fixing his husband with a glare. Temporarily, Shouta stressed. I'm going back. And we're gonna keep him then? Hizashi asked. He's not a dog, Shouta deadpanned. The blonde grinned before fixing him with his best pout. Can we keep him? Pretty please, he teased. Can I assume you're fine with adopting him then? Shouta asked, smirking. Hizashi's pout was gone. Wait, really? That's what I was going to ask you. I want to adopt him. Hizashi gripped his husband's shirt. You better be serious. You know I want a baby, Hizashi threatened. He's 14. He's not a baby, Shouta chuckled, holding his hands up in a placating gesture. We don't need to adopt a literal baby. But any age kid would be my baby, Hisashi said, releasing his husband. Do you really mean it? I mean, there's paperwork and figuring out if it's legally possible, but yes. That's what I'm trying to make happen, Shouta affirmed. Hisashi squealed in excitement. We might have to go to court, Shouta warned him. Why? Hisashi asked, tilting his head. His biological parents are still alive somewhere. They abandoned him because he's quirkless. He refused to tell the police who he was, and since there wasn't a missing person report, they just kept taking him to the orphanage. I'm not sure if them being alive changes the process, Shouta explained, taking in the sudden rage on the blonde's face. They abandoned him? What kind of parents do that? Hisashi screeched. Terrible ones, Shouta agreed. I don't care if we have to take this to court. He deserves a family that will fight for him, he exclaimed. I know, Zashi, Shouta said, taking his hair in his hand to play with. He braided it poorly, as his husband ranted about the boy's parents, prejudices against quirkless people, and the general failure of law enforcement in protecting the kid. I'm going to spoil him, Hisashi vowed when he ran out of ways to verbalize his anger. Shouta released the braid and smiled at him. I know, Zashi. Aizawa-san, good afternoon, the detective greeted as he joined Shouta in his office. Tsukachi-san, Shouta said, nodding. The detective took a seat at his desk. What brings you here? The detective asked. I need to adopt a kid, Shouta answered. This is a police station. The detective pointed out, confused. I already picked out the kid. The situation is unique though, Shouta clarified. And you need me because, the detective prompted. You can tell me what I need to do to make sure the adoption is binding. And I trust you not to be prejudiced, Shouta said firmly. Prejudiced against you, the detective tilted his head. Prejudiced against the kid. Like your station's officers have already been, Shouta stated. Start from the beginning, the detective ordered. I need something to convince him today, Shouta said, glaring at the man in front of him. He demanded proof of my intentions. Adoption takes time in any case. Since we have to track down his parents and get some kind of confirmation of the abandonment, it'll take longer. He was almost shot last night. I can't leave him there any longer, Shouta's voice rose in desperation. I can file to give you temporary guardianship, the detective assured him. Would that be done today? Shouta demanded. At most, 48 hours, the detective admitted. Damn it, Tsukachi-san. Shouta shouted, frustrated. I can talk to him for you, the detective offered. Explain the red tape and the likelihood of adoption in a case like this. I can also use my quirk to verify his story. You think he's lying? Shouta asked. No. Unfortunately, this happens all the time with quirkless kids. But if I can get a confirmation with my quirk, I can testify as much if his parents can't be found. Or even if they can be. Do you think you can convince him to go with me and Hisashi? Shouta asked. I'll try. I certainly won't be taking him to the orphanage. I doubt foster parents would go over any better, the detective replied, shaking his head. He had already filed to open an investigation into how that was handled. He'd be safer with you guys. With that, the pair headed out to the condemned house that the kid had been staying at. The detective pulled up to the curb. The picture didn't quite capture how run down this place was. It's worse inside, Shouta commented. They wordlessly got out of the car and walked up to the door. The detective raised an eyebrow at the broken door. Shouta stepped over it, making his way inside. The detective followed. Yeah, this is way worse, the detective agreed. I wouldn't be surprised if there's mold here. Ugh, and he's been living in this for 2 years. If we can convince him to go with you, I highly recommend taking him to the hospital to check his lungs. Noted, Shouta said, leading him into the living room. The empty living room. Even the makeshift bed was gone. Shit. Something wrong? The detective asked. He was in this room. All his stuff is gone too, Shouta groaned. He could be in another room, the detective supplied helpfully. Together they searched the rest of the house, but they didn't turn up anything. Hold on, I'll text him. I gave him a phone before I left, Shouta said, pulling out his own phone. To Midoriya Izuku. Where are you? I'm at the house. Shouta and the detective went outside to sit on the front steps. It took a good 20 minutes for Izuku to reply. From Midoriya Izuku. I'm at school. It gets out at 3:15. Shouta showed the detective. That's only an hour from now, the detective pointed out. I don't mind waiting here. It's nice outside. Almost 2 hours later, they finally spotted Izuku trudging down the street. Shouta had resisted the urge to blow up his phone with worried texts by keeping in mind that he had no idea how far away the school was. As the kid walked up to the house, Shouta took in his defeated posture and the burns on his uniform. When he was close enough, Shouta noticed the burn on his neck. What happened? Shouta asked sharply. My friend, the kid answered quietly. He looked up, noticing the detective. Who's yours? Shouta was about to continue his questioning about the burns when the detective spoke up. My name is Tsukachi Naomasa. I'm a detective at the Muzutafu Police Department. Izuku's green eyes narrowed in suspicion. No offense, but your department is shit. The detective chuckled. Yes, I agree. I filed for an investigation on how they handled your case. I apologize for their failure to properly help you. Izuku stayed quiet, calculating. Shouta spoke up. Adoption takes time and your unique situation may extend how long it takes. Tsukachi-san is here to explain the details to you in lieu of actual paperwork as proof. I know you wanted proof, but it's dangerous for you to stay here. Explain then, the kid said, crossing his arms over his chest. So 48 hours, give or take, for any kind of paperwork. And potentially months or even a year before the adoption will be official. That's not reassuring, Izuku said plainly. Adoption usually takes time. How long it takes doesn't necessarily affect your chances, the detective clarified. And what exactly are my chances? Izuku demanded, narrowing his eyes. Optimistic, the detective assured him. Not only did your parents forfeit you, but you are quirkless. In this instance, the fact that the law doesn't care for quirkless individuals will most likely benefit you. Positives and negatives, huh? Izuku remarked. Well, at least being quirkless will help me for once. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask some questions to record for your case, the detective said as he retrieved a legal pad and a pen from his car. I guess not, Izuku replied, frowning slightly. The detective led him back to the stairs and motioned for him to sit. How old were you when you were diagnosed quirkless? 4. Did your parents abandon you immediately after this? Didn't Aizawa-san tell you this? Answer the question, please. I need to hear it from you. Izuku gave him a look of suspicion. No, they didn't. Did their behavior towards you change? Yes. How did their behavior change? Izuku hesitated. My mom was sad. She kept apologizing to me. Do you know what she was apologizing for? I think she blamed her genes. And she felt bad that I couldn't be a hero. What about your father? Something dark crossed Izuku's face for a moment. He was mad. Tsukachi flinched slightly as his quirk registered the lie. Izuku seemed to zero in on that. He was mad, the detective parroted. Can you elaborate? Izuku was silent for a few minutes, seemingly re-evaluating the detective. He was in denial. The detective felt the twang of the lie fade. About you not having a quirk? Izuku nodded. Did his denial cause him to say or do anything as a response? Next question, Izuku said sharply. The detective looked at him in surprise. Are you refusing to answer? He asked, a little confused. Yes. If I answer, I'll lie, the kid fixed the man with a glare. And you'll know. Tsukachi felt a chill and he glanced over at Shouta, who was sitting on the porch and looking just as shocked. He looked back at Izuku. Why do you think that? Your quirk detects lies. I assume it's a feeling or a sound in your mind that isn't very comfortable. I'm unsure what the effect of half-truths would be, so I'm not going to bother, the kid answered, all too on the nose. It's a feeling, the detective confirmed. How did you? You flinched when I lied. Barely. You're a detective too, and that kind of work is suited to a quirk like that, Izuku answered. He did that to me too, Shouta said, chiming in from his spot on the porch. Huh, the detective vocalized. Okay, can you tell me why you won't answer? Or rather, why you would lie? If I say it, that makes it real, Izuku replied, looking at the ground. Okay, next question then. When did your parents abandon you? Shortly after I turned 6. How did they do this? They drove me halfway across Japan and left me on the side of the road somewhere. Was that the last time you saw them? No. I managed to find my way back in a few days. They weren't happy to see me and my dad told me to never come back. Was there a physical altercation? With my dad, yeah. He hit me. And was that the last time you saw them? No. It was just the last time I spoke to them. I stayed in the area for school, so I'd go to the apartment to see them through the windows from across the street. Or sometimes I'd go to the shopping district and I'd see my mom around in the different stores. Do you know where they live then? They moved out of that apartment 3 years ago. I don't know where they moved to and I don't see my mom in the shopping district anymore. Would you be willing to talk about your time on the streets with me? No. What are your parents' names? Inko and Hisashi Midoriya. Okay, I think that's all I need on that subject, the detective said, clicking his pen. Will you please go with Aizawa-san? I know my word may not mean much to you, but I've known him for years. I know you'd be safe with him. Izuku looked up at Shouta. Will I get to stay in my school? Do you want to? Shouta asked, looking at the burns on his uniform. Yes, Izuku answered. Then you will. You just need to let me know what school it is, Shouta replied. Aldera Junior High, Izuku informed him quickly. Shouta nodded. So will you stay with me then? Izuku said nothing, instead disappearing into the house. Shouta and Tsukachui looked at each other, confused. He came back a couple of minutes later with a duffel bag. What? Izuku asked when he noticed them staring at him. We searched every room. Where was that? Shouta asked. There's a loose panel in the wall under the stairs. I hide my stuff there while I'm at school. I thought you left because of that, Shouta said flatly. That's the point. People won't wait around for me if they think I'm gone, Izuku smiled, tapping his temple. Plus, no one will steal my stuff that way. Shouta nodded because that made sense. The detective started walking towards the car. Are we going then? He called from the driver's side. Shouta glanced at Izuku. Yeah, sure, the kid shrugged. The three of them piled into the car and returned to the station. I just need Izuku to sign a couple of forms for the guardianship, the detective mentioned as they got out. I thought contracts with minors aren't legally binding? Izuku remarked. They aren't. They are more like statements of understanding. If you were younger, it wouldn't be necessary, but it's required for all kids over 12. Similar to how kids 12 or older have to sign certain medical consent forms along with their parents, the detective explained. I'll go grab them. You and Aizawa can stay out here to put your bags in his car. While the detective grabbed the forms, Shouta had Izuku put his bags in the back seat. When Tsukachi came back, he explained the forms to Izuku and let the boy read them for himself. Once Izuku signed them, Shouta drove him home. Outside the apartment door, Shouta turned to Izuku. Okay. Listen, kid, he practically whispered, putting Izuku on edge. It's only fair to warn you, there's a guy in there and he's very loud, but I promise he's harmless. Just noisy. Harmless? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow. Just loud, and a little impulsive, Shouta chuckled. He might move fast or hug you, but yeah, he's harmless. I promise. Izuku nodded hesitantly so Shouta opened the door. You're back, a voice exclaimed before Izuku even stepped into the apartment. Yes, and he had barely started speaking when Izuku burst through the door past him. You're present, Mike, the kid shouted, looking at Hisashi in awe. Oh. You know me, little listener? Hisashi asked, clearly in just as much awe. Quirk, voice, modified by your directional speakers. Pro hero, a teacher at UA, and the host of Put Your Hands Up Radio. Wow, you look really different with your hair down. He paused his rambling, finally taking in Hisashi's casual look. You know me. Hisashi said, tearing up. He looked at Shouta. He knows me. I'll say he does. He only knew my name. You get trivia, Shouta replied, smiling fondly. You're an underground hero, Izuku frowned. There's nothing published about you. Oh, that's okay, little listener, Hisashi consoled the kid. Even knowing his name is impressive. A lot of people don't because of how rarely he's mentioned in the media. Shouta nodded in agreement. Well, you know present Mike, but his name is Yamada Hisashi. He's my husband, so he'll be your guardian too. Izuku gave him an unidentifiable look, and for a second he wondered if the kid would be homophobic. If you're married, why are your last names different? Izuku asked, dispelling Shouda's momentary anxiety. It's safer that way when you're in hero work. If your civilian name gets outed, villains could use it to track down your family, Shouta explained. What about me? If you're able to adopt me, Izuku asked. Shouta could see Hisashi smiling about the prospect of adoption out in the open. You could keep your last name if you want. If not, you would probably take my name since I'm not in the limelight as an underground hero, Shouta answered. Izuku nodded. Let me show you your room, little listener, Hisashi said brightly. He rambled as he led Izuku there. It was previously a guest room, so it's not really decorated. We'll go shopping and you can pick out whatever you'd like to make it your own space. You can even paint the walls if you want. Hisashi, we rent, Shouta warned. Oh, hush. If we ever move we can paint it back before we go. No one needs to know, Hisashi responded nonchalantly. Izuku laughed at that and Hisashi beamed at him. Izuku put his bag down at the end of the bed. Hisashi followed him in while Shouta leaned in the doorway. You'll probably need a desk for schoolwork, huh? Hisashi commented, already imagining all the ways they could set the place up for Izuku. What's your favorite color? Izuku looked down at his shoes, which were bright red in color. Red, he replied. Both adults noticed how wistful he looked when he said it but chose not to comment on it.